They were only supposed to be down there for 6 hours. That was the limit. The pressure at 2,000 meters would crush anything not perfectly engineered. The Orpheus 3 capsule had passed every test: thermal insulation, oxygen cycling, hydraulic redundancies. 4 divers had boarded it. 4 clearances had been scanned. 4 suits had been calibrated for descent. Mason, the expedition lead, had done dozens of dives before. This was his last one before retirement. He wasn't sentimental, just efficient. If the wreck below held what the Navy hinted at, Cold War surveillance equipment buried in a forgotten trench, then they would document it, tag it, and leave. That was the mission. Dale was the systems tech, the one who stayed silent most of the time. His world was numbers, fuel ratios, sonar pings. If something made noise it shouldn't, he noticed. Cooper was medical, young, nervous, but precise. And Rowan, the most recent addition, had replaced a last-minute dropout, communications officer. He wasn't supposed to even be here. But the clearance had gone through and no one had questioned it. 4 names, 4 oxygen feeds, 4 biometric IDs. Descent was smooth. The lights faded above them after 300 meters. Pressure alarms chirped occasionally, but never exceeded green thresholds. The crew made visual contact with the wreck just before hour 3. It was partially embedded in the ocean floor, ribs of twisted metal poking out like black bone. They deployed a tethered drone, logged the first images, and took readings of residual radiation. Everything went according to plan, until the capsule surfaced and the logs didn't match. Rowan was the first to notice. He had reactivated the uplink system to transmit the dive package when the console blinked red. Under crew biometric status, 5 entries flashed. Not 4, 5. He checked again. 5 separate patterns: heart rate, respiration, neural feedback. All authentic, all separate. "Mason," he called out, "we've got something wrong here." The commander leaned over the console, his brow furrowed. "That's not a glitch, that's crew data." Dale stood slowly from his seat, eyes locked on the screen. "We didn't bring 5 people." "No," Mason said flatly, "we didn't." Cooper leaned closer. "Are you sure it's not a duplicate read? Sometimes neural echoes can—" "No," Dale interrupted. "Each ID is unique. If 2 were from the same source, the system would flag it." The 5th ID read Delta 513, status, active during dive. But no one knew who that was. Rowan started checking the capsule interior. It was a compact space, just 6 meters long, arranged in a hexagonal layout with 4 seats along the perimeter and 2 empty ones at the rear. Equipment crates were secured, tools accounted for, food rations untouched. Every helmet was where it had been left, but the air felt thicker, denser somehow, like someone else had just been breathing in it. He opened the maintenance log to confirm their departure signatures. That's when he saw it. The airlock had registered 5 suit depressurizations at depth, each spaced apart by no more than 30 seconds. But only 4 suits had been issued. He looked back at Mason. "Someone went outside," Rowan said. "Someone extra." Mason didn't speak. He walked to the suit chamber, unlatched each locker one by one. Every suit was there, all accounted for. No moisture, no displacement, no signs of recent use. The dive helmets, however, were less convincing. One of them, Dale noticed, was seated slightly crooked, like it had been replaced in haste. Rowan checked the external feed logs. The footage had been wiped clean after the 4th hour. Only a black screen remained. Then a single line appeared on the monitor. Echo detected. 5 complete. No timestamps. No sender. Just that message. Cooper swallowed hard. Where's the surface team? They tried to re-establish connection with the research vessel above, Ardent Horizon, but the signal was gone. Not jammed, just empty. The capsule was still tethered, but no commands came through. Emergency beacon showed green, but nothing responded. Rowan sat back in his chair. "We didn't bring 5 people down here," he whispered. Mason stared at the console. "Maybe not, but we brought 5 back." The capsule's interior lights shifted, subtly but noticeably, from their usual cool white to a pale blue. Dale noticed it first. He ran a diagnostic on the environmental systems, but the readouts returned normal. Oxygen levels held steady. Humidity had risen slightly, but not enough to cause concern. Still, the shift made the capsule feel colder and more unfamiliar. Mason called the surface again. Static. No response. Rowan tried the backup channel. He accessed the encrypted signal line that bypassed standard mission frequencies. The line was supposed to ping directly to the vessel's onboard AI and relay a response.
Instead, the screen populated with old text logs. They weren't from this dive. They weren't even from this decade. The logs were tagged with mission headers from 12 years ago, missions no longer listed in the deep-sea registry. One stood out, Orpheus 1. Dale leaned in. That model was decommissioned after a hull failure. Rowan clicked on the first log entry. It was audio only. A voice came through, quiet, panicked, familiar. It was Rowan's voice. He froze. Dale looked at him. "Did you record anything on the way down?" Rowan shook his head. "No." Mason stood silent at the rear of the capsule, watching Rowan's hands tremble slightly as the playback continued. In the recording, Rowan, or whoever sounded exactly like him, was whispering frantically. "I don't remember going outside. I know I didn't, but the system says I did. And the door, it opened by itself." The message ended. Everyone stayed still for a long moment. Then Dale said what they were all thinking. "If that's your voice, and it's from 12 years ago, how does that even make sense?" Rowan didn't answer, because there was no answer that fit. Cooper moved toward the suit lockers again. He opened each one, this time slower, examining the inner linings, the condensation inside the helmets, the scent of the neoprene. He paused on the 4th suit, the one they assumed was his. The name tag had worn away. The ID strip had been removed. "Guys," he called out. Mason joined him. "This yours?" Cooper hesitated. "I thought it was." The capsule's temperature dropped again. Rowan checked the thermal module. The reading had dropped 2 degrees in 3 minutes, despite the system reporting no change in output. Dale returned to the console and opened the dive chamber logs. He scrolled to the depressurization records. There it was again. 5 suit exits, 5 entries, time-stamped and sequenced. But something else was off now. The 5th suit cycle happened 1 minute after the others had returned, which meant someone opened the airlock after the dive had ended. But none of them had left, not consciously. Rowan moved to the back of the capsule, to the seat near the emergency gear locker. It was the only seat no one had touched. He crouched beside it. The safety harness was undone, hanging loose. A faint scuff mark ran down the side of the seat, a pattern that didn't match the boots worn by any of them. He pulled open the locker. Inside were the standard emergency rations.
A flare kit, a decompression mask, and tucked at the back, a small personal logbook. It was water-warped, ink smudged, but the name inside was clear. Rowan L. Mercer. His own name, but the date on the cover was from 2011. Rowan stumbled back. Cooper stepped forward, grabbing the book. He flipped through the pages, most of them blank except for one, written in shaky handwriting. Don't follow the fifth. It copies, but it doesn't know how to stop. Silence followed. Mason exhaled slowly, turning back toward the main hatch. "I'm overriding the lockdown," he said. He moved to the control panel and keyed in the emergency reset code, bypassing the system's resistance. The outer hatch should have taken 30 seconds to release. Instead, it opened instantly. Beyond it was not the expected black ocean or docking chamber. It was dry, dimly lit, and lined with metal walls. Cooper leaned toward the opening. "That's not the recovery bay," he whispered. Mason stepped back. "That's not anything I've ever seen." A corridor stretched beyond the hatch, the same size and structure as the capsule, cylindrical, narrow, lined with blinking lights that pulsed at steady intervals. It didn't look like part of the Orpheus system. Dale checked the capsule's location beacon, still submerged, still tethered, still 2,100 meters below the surface. Rowan stared through the open hatch, unable to speak, because at the far end of the corridor, just visible past the first curve, someone was standing, not moving, not approaching, just watching. And whoever it was, they were wearing his suit. Rowan didn't remember deciding to move. One moment he stood in the capsule's hatch, staring into that impossible corridor, and the next, his boots touched the unfamiliar floor beyond it. The metal beneath him didn't feel like part of the Orpheus structure. It was warmer than it should have been. Not in temperature, but in sensation, like it had been waiting for contact. Lights along the ceiling clicked on in sequence, illuminating 10 meters ahead with each step he took. Behind him, Mason called out, "Rowan, stop! That isn't part of the ship!" But Rowan kept moving. He wasn't in a trance. His mind was clear, too clear, in fact. The further he walked into the corridor, the distant the cold panic in his chest became. The capsule, his crewmates, the depth, all of it began to feel irrelevant, like memories placed inside him that no longer mattered. The corridor curved left, then straightened. Ahead was a glass door with no visible seams. It opened soundlessly as he approached. Inside, the room expanded into a hexagonal chamber, nearly identical in size and shape to the Orpheus 3 main cabin. Except this one was mirrored. There were chairs, terminals, even helmet racks. And at the center of the room, a single suit, upright, sealed, the faceplate fogged from within. Rowan approached slowly, each step pressing down on a silence so dense it rang in his ears. The lights overhead dimmed slightly as he neared the suit. Not all at once, only in a sequence that followed him like a rhythm designed to draw attention. The fogged helmet turned slightly, not fast, not abruptly, just enough to be unmistakable. Rowan froze, his breath caught in his throat. He looked down at the suit's chest. There, above the control panel, was a nameplate. R. Mercer. His own, exactly as printed on his emergency ID. Rowan stepped closer and placed a hand on the visor. The glass was colder than the air around it. Inside, the figure didn't move again, but its breath continued, slow and measured. Mason's voice came through the comlink again, staticky but clear enough. Rowan, if you can hear me, get back here, now. Something's wrong with the airlock. It's changing every time we look away from it. Rowan turned his head slightly, about to respond. Then the room blinked, just once. A glitch, like a dropped frame. And when he looked back at the suit, it was gone. No sound, no motion, just emptiness where it had stood seconds ago. The lights brightened again. The floor vibrated softly underfoot, and behind him, the corridor had vanished. Back in the capsule, Mason, Dale, and Cooper tried to make sense of what they were seeing. The hatch remained open, but beyond it was no longer the same structure. Now it showed only blackness, endless and still, as if the capsule had opened into vacuum. The thermal sensors read 0. Visual feedback failed. Rowan's signal, however, was still active, still moving, still breathing. Dale accessed the internal suit cams. What he saw made no sense. Rowan appeared to be walking through an identical capsule. He passed the same lockers, the same control panel, the same emergency gear. But the timestamps on the footage were wrong. They were from 8 days in the future. Mason shut the feed down. He said, "This isn't about a fifth diver." Cooper looked up. "What then?" "It's about us." Dale stared blankly at the command console. The fifth ID had returned. Still labeled Delta 513, but this time the status was different. Active. Compliance confirmed. Inside the alternate chamber, Rowan opened a terminal. No password, no security layer. Just a single file on the screen. Echo Stack Mercer. He clicked it. The screen filled with logs, thousands of them. Audio files, system pings, psych evaluations. But none of them had been written from this capsule, or even during this mission. They were from other places, other versions. In one, Rowan was listed as mission commander. In another, he never made it onto the crew list. And in one disturbingly detailed log, he had entered the capsule alone. No other crew members, no witnesses. Yet the system still reported 5 active suits during that dive, all labeled as Mercer XX. The terminal blinked and played a recording. Rowan's voice again, slightly older, slower. "If you're seeing this, it means you reached stack level 7. You're the last Mercer instance not yet folded. You haven't looped. You haven't broken protocol. That means you might still have a choice." The message stopped there. The screen returned to the home page, this time with a new option. Join or reject. No explanation, no undo. Rowan turned toward the door, but now the glass had turned solid. Behind it, something moved, a silhouette, pacing slowly along the corridor, pausing every few steps to tilt its head, watching. He looked back at the screen. The 2 options still pulsed, waiting for a decision. Rowan didn't press anything. The words join and reject continued to blink on the screen, waiting for a decision he didn't understand. The room stayed silent, but there was tension in the air, like an unseen countdown had begun the moment the file opened. Behind the sealed glass, the silhouette outside moved again, not pacing anymore, closer now, slower, like it could feel his hesitation and was responding to it. Rowan stepped back from the console, unsure if touching either option would change something irreversible. Instead, he reached into his side pouch and removed the analog recorder, standard issue for all deep-sea dives. He clicked it on. Recording. "This is Rowan Mercer, Communications Officer. Timestamp. Unknown. Location. Uncertain. I'm not in the capsule anymore, at least not ours. Something replicated it. The layout is exact, but the details aren't right. And the system here, it knows me.
It's calling me an instance. He paused. I think I'm inside some kind of echo. Back in the real capsule, Mason paced in front of the console, watching Rowan's signal remain active yet static, hovering in a space that shouldn't exist. Cooper sat near the suit lockers, staring blankly at his own helmet. He hadn't spoken since they lost sight of Rowan. Dale was running pattern analyses, comparing timestamps, breath rates, even blinking frequencies. But something kept repeating. We're looping, he said flatly. Not time, behavior, our own. Mason looked over. Explain. We've seen this before, this moment. Not like déjà vu, actual repetition. Look, he pointed to the motion tracker. 3 blips, Mason, Dale, Cooper, and a 4th blip inside the capsule, but in the same space where Rowan's had been earlier, even though Rowan was still outside, or inside, somewhere. Rowan paced the mirrored chamber, unsure what would trigger a change. The screen still glowed with the same 2 commands. He turned toward the wall, opened one of the compartments labeled emergency rations, and found something he hadn't expected. Inside was a folded uniform, his size, with his name. But the fabric was older, worn, discolored, and stitched with a mission badge from a project he'd never been part of. Echo Stack Initiative, Level 9. He unfolded it. Inside the shirt pocket was a photo. 4 people in dive suits. One of them was unmistakably Rowan, older, gaunt, eyes hollowed out. But the others weren't Mason, Dale, or Cooper. They weren't anyone he recognized. And the strangest part, they were standing in a capsule just like Orpheus 3, only above the hatch, the nameplate read Mercer Unit 5B. He dropped the photo. Then the voice returned, not from the speaker system, but inside his helmet, his own voice. Protocol engagement required, cycle limit approaching, loop stability degrading. Rowan backed away, his breath catching in his throat. No, I didn't agree to anything. I'm not part of this. The screen suddenly blinked off. A new line appeared. Then you must choose. Below it, 3 new options materialized. Reset loop, merge instance, exit available at level 12. Rowan stared. These weren't answers, they were traps. Meanwhile, in the capsule, Mason's hands trembled as he reviewed the biometric data. Something's wrong with Cooper's vitals, he said. Dale turned. How? They're duplicating. He pointed to the neural scan overlay. A second rhythm had appeared, almost identical. Almost. But not quite, Dale said. Look at the waveform. One of them is delayed. Before either could respond, Cooper stood up from the corner without a word and walked toward the airlock. Mason called out, "Where are you going?" Cooper paused. I just need to see it. Mason moved forward, blocking his path. You're not thinking clearly. Sit back down. Cooper blinked, slowly. I already went through it once. I think. Maybe I'm supposed to again. Dale stepped between them. If he steps through and there's a copy already inside, we don't know what that means. Mason looked at Cooper. Do you remember what you said to me before the dive? Cooper's face twitched. I don't know. Mason nodded. That's how we'll know. Back in the alternate structure, Rowan tried opening one of the side hatches. It slid open with a hiss and revealed a narrow shaft marked Instance Access Level 2. He hesitated. Behind him, the corridor lights began to dim again. Something was returning. He had seconds to decide. He stepped into the shaft, grabbed the cold ladder rungs, and started to climb. Downward. each level marked by silent lights, each step echoing in the metal tunnel. When he reached the second level, he stepped into a chamber identical to the first, only this time it was occupied. A figure stood with its back to him, reviewing a data terminal. Same build, same uniform, same movement. Rowan's breath caught as the figure slowly turned. Same face, but with eyes that didn't recognize him. The other Rowan blinked, then spoke softly. "Did you reject too?" Rowan didn't speak at first. He just stared at the other version of himself. Same posture, same suit, but the expression was different, detached, almost rehearsed, like the man across from him had already lived this moment, perhaps more than once. The other Rowan finally turned back to the console and gestured toward the chair opposite him. "You're not the first, and you won't be the last." Rowan stayed standing. "What is this place?" The copy tapped the screen. Data lines danced across the glass. "It's a stack, a compression zone. Every time one of us rejects the protocol, we're sent here to wait, sometimes for hours, sometimes for years." Rowan shook his head. "But we didn't agree to this. I didn't." "You entered. That was enough. That's the contract. It feeds on decision." From the hallway behind them, a light flickered, then another. Rowan's skin prickled. "What happens if I don't choose anything?" he asked. His double didn't smile, but something in his face shifted, like amusement dulled by fatigue. "Then you decay. Eventually, the system merges you with someone who does. It hates loose ends." Inside the capsule, Mason was losing patience. Cooper sat quietly again, unmoving. But Dale had started repeating the same phrase, quietly at first, then louder. "Mission elapsed time, 6 hours, 22 minutes, over and over." Mason leaned toward him. "Dale, what are you doing?" Dale didn't respond. Mason shook his shoulder hard. Dale blinked, as if waking from a dream. "Sorry, it just played in my head. It the same tone from the briefing, like a looped file." Mason looked at the console. Rowan's feed still showed movement. Vitals normal. Position static. Except now it wasn't showing one image. There were two. Same face, same room, slight movements out of sync. Cooper stood up again. "I think I've seen the other me. In reflections, in the monitor. He's a little behind, like a ghost copying me a second too late." Dale checked the visual feed. "That's not just a ghost, that's a divergence. Something is splitting us." Mason clenched his jaw. "How long do we have before the split becomes permanent?" Dale looked at the growing delay in Cooper's eye movement on both screens. "Not long." Back in the lower chamber, the two Rowans faced each other. "I didn't mean to enter. I just followed the corridor." His double leaned in. "We always say that. Every single one of us. But the corridor appears because we're the ones who'd follow it." A long pause. "Then what's the exit?" "There isn't one." "Someone said level 12. The other Rowan interrupted. "I reached level 12. You don't want to see what's down there." Another light flickered in the hall. Heavy steps now, closer. The lights dimmed again. The double grabbed Rowan's arm. "Whatever you do, don't let it merge you, not while you're still aware. That's when it takes control." "What is it?" "Protocol." Something hissed behind the wall. They both turned. Then the screen in the room changed again. "Mason, instance available. Dale, instance available. Cooper, diverged." Rowan backed away. "How do I stop it?" His copy replied without turning around. "You don't. You replace it." The walls began to breathe. That was the only way Rowan could describe it. The middle panels around him seemed to pulse, expanding and contracting with a rhythm that wasn't mechanical. It felt alive. His double stepped away from the console. It's starting again. Rowan looked at the feed still glowing on the terminal. Now 3 faces were visible. Mason, Dale, Cooper. Each frozen for a moment, then looping backward. Like time in their world had started to rewind just slightly before correcting itself. "Can I go back?" Rowan asked. The other Rowan didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the hatch on the far wall. "There's no going back, only deeper forward, unless what? Unless you pull the plug before the stack finishes writing you in." Rowan stared. "You mean, cut the signal?" The copy nodded. "Yes, sever the stream, end the mirror, but you'll lose the others." "They'll die?" "Worse," the other said quietly. "They'll become echoes too, if they haven't already." In the real capsule, Mason watched the readings spin. Cooper had gone completely still. His vitals flatlined for 12 seconds, then resumed, at a slightly higher cadence than before. "His heart's beating, but it's not his." The words made no sense, but Mason felt the truth behind them. Something was wearing Cooper like a glove. He leaned toward the console. Rowan's feed was blinking now. The loop timer had begun. 002, 31 remaining. He looked at Dale. "Can we cut it?" Dale hesitated. "If we sever the feed before it finishes syncing, maybe." "Then do it." Inside the mirrored chamber, Rowan placed both hands on the terminal. His other self was already fading, glitching at the edges like a bad broadcast. Rowan shouted, "What happens if I do this?" "You stay real, but they don't," the copy whispered. Rowan closed his eyes. The capsule, the crew, the descent. Every moment leading to this. He didn't remember choosing to become part of this system, but somehow the system had chosen him. He took a deep breath and pressed the command, "Disconnect." In the Orpheus 3 capsule, every light shut off for 3 full seconds. Then, just one blink at a time, they came back. Mason stood frozen at the console. Dale watched Cooper. Rowan's ID vanished from the screen. So did the 5th. No loops, no lag, just silence. Then, from the comm speaker, a single line in Rowan's voice. "I'm out."